Hey everyone, my name is Loyalty Resner, and today I want to talk about my favorite anime manga series, the one that really got me back into anime after not watching it for like 6 years. And this anime is Bleach. And I got into it, I believe, in 2018 after seeing this like really cool AMV, or at least what I thought at the time was really cool, this AMV on YouTube. It was like a 1,000 foot crutch AMV. I think the song was Scream, so that really got me into the anime. However, I was one of those like casual watchers where I was like, oh, these scenes are so cool. I never really understood the deeper story or meaning of Bleach, and I didn't even read the manga until like a year later, and I kind of strictly kept it to reading the Thousand Year Blood War because I never thought that the anime version would ever come out, but little did I know, a few years later, they'd release the reveal for it, and I remember staying up till like 3 in the morning just to see the reveal, to watch it through a YouTuber stream. But the reason I'm making this video is because in the past few years, I kind of got into the deeper meaning of Bleach and more of the storytelling, the meaning behind it. And one of the things that I noticed in the manga, and I think this is probably a lot of people's favorite parts of the manga, is the art and the art style, the art direction of how Kubo draws his panels. Just the way that they are framed and just how beautiful the shots are in multiple aspects and portions of the manga. And one of the things that I noticed, however, when reading was the emotional storytelling that he likes to put into the eyes when he makes some of these panels. And what I mean by that is there will be these moments in the manga where the characters, they'll be in a fight or in a discussion, and there will be these tiny mini short panels of while they're talking, and it'll be like this very close up angle of the eye. And usually, why he does this is it'll be very apparent, and I'll show examples later in the video. Is it'll show like what the character is feeling by like subtle changes in the way the eye looks. Some examples I can think of on the top of my head are like White when he's fighting Ichigo in his inner world, and when like Ichigo is like, "Where is old man Zangetsu?" and White is like, "I told you I'm Zangetsu," and then there's like a close-up shot of like this somber look on White's eye because he's hurt from being rejected by Ichigo. Then there's panels of like Yukiura's eyes. Those are like the only two examples I can think of at this moment. But the one character I want to focus on is Ichigo, and I'm not going to focus on like the entire story of Ichigo and the art on his eyes. I want to specifically go to where I think the eyes are most important for Ichigo's character, and that is his Vizard arc, where he puts on the hollow mask throughout the Vizard arc, all the way through Hueco Mundo, and then Fake Kurakura, even though it's very temporary. And that's because when he puts the mask on, there's a lot of emotions that are very visible on Ichigo's face throughout this entire arc. And it kind of just shows how Ichigo is feeling when he puts on this mask. And it really tells you, like, the relationship he has with his hollow side, how it evolves, how it retracts throughout the entire arc. And for reference, I'm only going to be going through the manga for this. I'm not going to be really referencing the anime here because the anime didn't really express this strength. However, this is not at the fault of the anime. It's just because it's animation versus still images. So the still images, there's obviously going to be a lot more room for this artistic creativity. And even then, I also liked how the anime did like the instinct blue eyes for Ichigo when like his instinct kicked in. But again, we're going to strictly go with the manga. So without further ado, we're going to go with the first appearance of the Hollow Mask, and not much is going to be happening yet, but what I do like here is the unstable red color, the red shading that he puts on the eyes, along with the hole pouring out of his chest after he bursts out of the cloth that he got wrapped in by Tessai. And it just really creates this feeling of a unshakable, or like this unstable force has begun to wake up within Ichigo, and we even get this really cool close up of the eyes peering through the smoke to show like something inhumane has woken up. But nothing really happens here because Ichigo just breaks off the mask and he just kind of throws it to the side. He's just like, nothing happened, ignore that. So, and this was in chapter 64. And we don't really get to see much of the mask after this. We get like a few shots here and there, or not shots, but a few moments here and there throughout Soul Society where like the mask is showing up on his body to protect him. But at the end of Soul Society, we finally get to see the mask again, and we also get to see the first like takeover of one of my favorite characters, or if not my favorite character in Bleach, White. And this is in chapter 165 into 166. This is where I'm going to go over. And so this is like 100 chapters later after the first initial appearance of it being on his face. And there's a few takeaways I want to note down, and I kind of want you to remember when going over this part. And, you know, he catches the blade right before he's about to get struck by Byakuya, and he tells Byakuya, "I have no name." And the main note I want you to remember is I noticed how on the left side of his face we got the white pupil and the black of the whites of his eye turning black. Normal because it's a hollow, right? And then the right side of the face, with covered by the mask, is a full yellow eye. Now, this may not mean much right now, but my interpretation of this at the moment is that the left side is White side of the body, or the representation of, like, you know, White himself, and the right side, I think, is Ichigo's side of the body. And this is, in my opinion, going to become more apparent because as the fight goes on, right, this same half and half continues, but I do want to mention this one close-up shot where White is about to fire Getsuga, and I just love how his eye narrows to kind of show like he's a predator ready to strike. Because remember, he's a hollow. These things act on instinct. They're genuine animals. And then there's that next close-up shot where he shows up behind Byakuya, and he just looks excited. I just love how he portrays how he, like, yes, this is part of Ichigo, but it's also still an instinctive creature, and just the way the mask blends into the smile, it's just perfect. I love it. I love how the eyes work, and I love how the smile just creates this very animalistic appearance. However, this is where the duality of White and Ichigo, I think, begin to come in, because right after this, Ichigo on our, I forgot to clarify, on our right, it's his left, but it's our right, so I'm gonna just go from our perspective. The right side grabs at the mask. It like holds onto it tight, and that's when he begins to start pulling at it. And what I notice is that White seems to only be moving the left side. He's holding up the sword, and he's like, "What are you doing? Stop! Stop grabbing it." And then what Ichigo is doing, he's like, "Disappear, vanish." And it seems like White is only kind of like moving the left side. Like, he was moving both sides earlier, of course he was, because that's how he was fighting. But it seems in this moment, Ichigo has full control of the right side, and that's how he's able to pull off the mask. And, you know, the mask comes off, Ichigo's like, "Ignore that. That didn't really happen." Or, not that it didn't really happen. It's just, ignore it. We'll worry about it later when it becomes more relevant. And then the fight ends. It concludes. Ichigo wins, and we move on. And the next time we're ever going to see this mask is all the way in the Vizard training of Ichigo, when he finally goes to the Vizards after his confrontation earlier with Shinji. And this is in chapter 216, and this is when Ichigo shows up. He's like, "I want you to teach me how to control my inner hollow," because at this point his inner hollow is getting closer and closer to taking control of him, right? Forcefully kind of like coming in. And they're like, "Okay, we'll teach you, but you're gonna need to show us if you have the potential first, if you really want us to teach you," right? So Hiyori, it's basically like a game of poking the bear with a stick, and Hiyori, puts on her hollow mask and she begins to poke at him, right? Just like, well, more than poking, she's beating him up, and at some point, right, it does end up waking up White, and we get that really cool manga panel of White screaming, right, like screaming like just like a pit, like an angry animal, just annoyed, right? And he just immediately lunges in, presses her to the wall, and starts choking her. And we get that same exact eye appearance of the half of the one white eye, and then the right side of the full yellow eye, right? Now, I do think the full yellow is also just showing that, like, this is the side that's hollowified, right? I mean, that makes sense because it's a hollow mask covering it, and like normal hollow, the eye is going to be yellow under the mask. It just makes sense, right? Mask gets easily broken off, though. He gets stopped as if nothing happened. So not much really happened here, but White did come out here a lot more animalistic than last time, because before he was talking and such, but this time he wasn't really talking at all. He just came off as a complete monster. So again, nothing to note here. However, I just wanted to add that extra note on the duality of what's going on Ichigo's face. And after this, he goes through the holification training. He still appears animalistic again, and we still get that duality of left side is White's eye, the right side is just that full hollow eye because the mask is covering it. But again, I think this is Ichigo for a reason we're going to see soon, because up until chapter 231, we finally get to see Ichigo put on the mask. He completed his hollow training, and he looks very pissed off at Grimjaw, which makes sense because, I mean, Grimjaw literally, like, he made quick work of this guy. He made very quick work of him, right? And when Ichigo puts on this mask against Grimjaw in 231, he looks pissed off. This is the first emotion we get to see when Ichigo puts on the mask himself, right? And he's just glaring at him. Like, just the shadows under the eyes and that narrowed look, you could just tell that this is him settling a score with Grimjaw. Now, he does get a good upper hand on Grimjaw, but of course it breaks pretty quick because he's still kind of like premature with wearing the mask. But yeah, first emotion we see is anger, and this is actually also when both of the eyes are black and yellow, rather than that duality earlier, and I think that's obviously because Ichigo is now in control rather than White being in control. So after this appearance of the mask, we go into chapter 253, and this is where he goes against Dordoni, right? And when he fights Dordoni, he tries to hold off wearing it, because at this point of the story, Ichigo is still not really comfortable with his hollow side. Even like after the holification training, right? He was just like, yeah, right, I'm not gonna see you again. Like, he pretty much like says that to White, because White's like, don't get killed out there, and he's just like, yeah, whatever, dude. I'm not gonna see you again. But in this fight, the changes begin to become more apparent within Ichigo, because when he puts on the mask, right? Because he's like, all right, but I'll only show you for a second, because Dordoni wants to see his mask. And he takes out this dude in one shot. He just one-taps him like it's nothing. And he doesn't really have like an anger-filled expression here. I mean, it makes sense. He doesn't really have a grudge against this guy. But when he takes off the mask, we actually get to kind of see like the change, like a slight emotional change on Ichigo. And the way he takes off the mask is very confident. Like, it's like he's not that ashamed of it, and he even says, I told you it would only be for a second. And Dordoni is smiling, satisfied with the result of Ichigo's strength. I mean, you can even see in Ichigo's eyes, it's not exactly an angry look. It's like he's showing off. It's like he's super confident. in wearing this. Not, I don't know about wearing the mask, but in taking out his opponent so swiftly. And then, like, soon after this, he finally encounters Yukiura for the second time in chapter 271. And, you know, they have this discussion, and Ichigo's like, I don't want to fight you. You haven't done anything to hurt my friends. Like, I'm not going to fight you. I'm not going to bother. But then Yukiura's like, you do know that I'm the one that kidnapped your girl, right? And then Ichigo's like, oh, really now? And he immediately goes right into combat. Like, immediately clashes with this dude. Which Yukiura just R-farms on this guy and blocks his sword with his wrist. Like, just like an absolute G. And of course, Ichigo is pissed off, and he puts on the mask, like, near right away, because he's ready to, like, take this dude out. So he tells him, I won't hold back. He goes Bankai, and Yukiura's like, Bankai, huh? And when Ichigo comes out of the smoke, you can see he has the hollow mask on at the ready, which completely surprises Yukiura. And, you know, rage-filled expression similar to the Grimjaw fight, but I don't think it might not be as intense as the Grimjaw fight, but it makes sense why he's pissed off. I mean, again, he just got told that this dude was the reason why Orihime got kidnapped. But I do like how the smoke trail over his eye adds a little more intensity to the expression when he comes out of the smoke. I do like that little detail that Kubo added there. And, you know, he fires Getsuga. He thinks he gets him in one shot, and Yukiura's like, I'm not done, bro. Like, you're not all that, little bro. Not yet. So far, we've only experienced two emotions when Ichigo wears the mask. Anger and confidence. Those are the only two things we've experienced. Grimjaw anger, Dordino confidence, and then we got anger again with Yukiura. And this mask breaks easily too after the Yukiura fight. It's because he used all of it in one blow. Because he wasn't very bright here. And then, you know, Yukiura immediately kills him after. But then that's when Grimjaw comes right back in with Orihime. And he's like, alright, heal him, get him up, I want to fight him. And this is when one of the most hyped up fights of this arc come into play. And Ichigo throughout the fight, he doesn't want to put it on. He is avoiding putting on this mask intentionally. Why? Well, we know why. Orihime's watching. But Grimjaw decides to fire a cheap shot towards Orihime's direction. And when he does, Ichigo is now forced to put on the mask. And right before Ichigo tries to turn around, I want to add this little side note because I love it a lot. Before this, when Nell was scared about Ichigo losing to Grimjaw, and Orihime told Nell, I won't have the panel here, but it happens not long before this. It shows when Orihime says that he'll be fine, that her hand, it zooms in on her hand, trembling and sweating, as if she is aware or can feel, like, almost fully that Ichigo has his inner hollow more present, because even in the holification training with the Vizard, she said that, like, he's getting stronger, but not in a way that I like. Something's wrong. So in chapter 280, the second part of, like, her getting scared is when he puts on the mask, and before he even turns around, this is where those close-up eye shots become very integral. Not to just Orihime, obviously this is about Ichigo, but even when he has it on, it zooms in on her face where she's more, like, shaken up, and she's like, Ichigo. And then when he finally turns around, he actually tries to look as calm as possible, which makes sense because he's trying not to scare her. But when he turns around, her face just goes into complete terror. And I like that subtle emotional foreshadowing, even though it didn't take long to pull it off. I just like those 3 stages where it showed the sweating, trembling hand. She's like, I'm aware of this presence, but I can't pinpoint it. And then once he puts it on, she gets more shaken up because now she can feel that spiritual pressure get heavier. And then when he turns around, it's just the horror of confirmation is just all over her face, or on her eye. And after he sees the look on her face, this is where we get the close-up of Ichigo's eyes getting softer. They're not exactly like super soft, but they're visibly softer, as if there's a sense of shame. So now we have a new emotion being expressed through Ichigo's eyes: shame, or a sense of shame. And he tells her, I know, I look scary right now, but it'll be quick. So the fight goes on. Grimjaw releases Resurrection. And Grimjaw, being Grimjaw, is having fun with Ichigo. And during this fight, the entire point of this fight, I'm sure you already know if you've read the manga, is it's challenging Ichigo's instinct or thrill to fight, right? Because Grimjaw is trying to kind of like hammer that into his head. He's just like, you came here, you'll see later, he'll be like, you came here to fight me, you want to kill me, this and that. And during the fight, Ichigo seems to kind of like get a little into it, a little like cocky, so to speak. And even Grimjaw at some point, or soon after that reveal, he goes, there it is. It's those eyes I hate. I can't stand looking at those eyes. And that expression is definitely referring to Ichigo's like will to win, his determination to win. And even when Grimjaw, goes in for the attack and Ichigo catches it, Grimjaw is like, it would be pretty boring if your mask broke, right? And then Ichigo, this is where his cockiness kind of starts to come to full display, where it shows both of their eyes face to face, and he goes, if my mask broke, don't make me laugh. And then he, does a strike on Grimjaw. So he's getting really into the fight. And then Grimjaw fires another cheap shot at Orihime, which Ichigo has to immediately go block. But he blocks it with the backside of his body, which then forces him to look right at her. And since he's straining from the pain, it makes his face look a lot scarier to her. And she gets even more terrified. And when he sees this, we get a close-up shot of Ichigo's eye again, but this time with much more shame showing through. So at first we had like the slightest bit of shame, his eyes softened, right? And then his eyes got a little more intense throughout the fight and even got a little cocky. And now that shame has returned, but even more intensified after scaring her again when coming face to face with her when wearing the mask. And this is where I want to add one of the coolest little details that I love when Kubo made this manga and made this art, is that at the end of a lot of chapters in the series, there's these cute or like foreshadowing illustrations he likes to add. And right after this, we get this little illustration of this black figure with a mask with chains wrapped around it, representing that Ichigo, due to his shame of having his inner hollow come in full, not in full form, but rather having his hollow being used on his, his mask, he's now feeling like he's being held back, or not feeling like he is being held back because he's scaring someone that he cares about. I just love how that illustration shows how much he's mentally being held back. But right after this, he goes right back to fighting with Grimjaw, right? They go back and forth, and he starts to lose, right? He starts losing. And Nell is like, who's going to cheer for Ichigo if we don't? he's trying to get win, but he's getting hurt for you. And that's where Orihime has this monologue of like, it's just when I look at him, I can't tell if that's him anymore. And right when Grimjaw is about to do the killing strike, this is where Orihime goes, don't die, you don't have to win, you don't have to try, just stop getting hurt. And when that happens, Ichigo catches another strike from Grimjaw, and he turns around, and his expression is now more peaceful and relaxed. And he goes, I'm sorry, Grimjaw, but I can't afford to lose to you any longer. And then he gives the strike to Grimjaw. And right after this, at the end of the panel, or at the end of this chapter, that same black figure wrapped in chains breaks out of them free, showing that Ichigo's resolution with his inner hollow has somewhat resolved, or completely resolved in this moment, because of Orihime cheering him on, that he shouldn't be afraid. But of course, this isn't the end of the fight. Grimjaw just gets right back up and starts fighting again. And then at the end of this fight, right, Ichigo's resolve completely establishes, and he's like, yeah, I came here to fight you. I came here so I could bring everyone back home with me. Rukia, Uryu, Renji, Chad, Orihime, everyone. I'm bringing them back, right? And the fight ends, and he ends up beating Grimjaw. So through this fight, we saw him have now shame with his inner hollow, which then got resolved, and he got like a little more at peace with it toward the very end. And yeah, so that is our next emotion we got. So to now add on to the list, we have anger, confidence, shame, and I guess we'll say resolution. Maybe there's a better word. But the next time we're going to see this mask is not for a little bit. We finally see it again in the final Ichigo versus Yukiura fight, right? And this is after he quote-unquote masters his holification in the Grimjaw fight. And when he puts on the mask, there's a visible change in his eyes. That very popular panel of like him, like, you know, with like the Ryatsu like pouring around him when he's like going upward with the mask, his eyes are full yellow. And my interpretation of this, do you remember what I said in the times that White took over the holified side that was covered? The full yellow was like the holification. And that Grimjaw fight was when he quote-unquote mastered the holification. I think that's what this is. I think this is showing us that his holification has gotten even stronger when putting on this mask. And now, you know, the fight goes on. Yukiura takes him to the roof of Las Noches. And when he goes up, Yukiura does his resurrection, going like, I'm going to show you, you know, the difference in our strength. And when he releases it and the rain of Ryatsu pours down, right? We get a close-up shot of Ichigo's eyes. And I think this is the most human we ever see Ichigo's eyes when he's holified. And the reason I say that is because this close-up shot in these chapters from from 344 to 346 is the way I think he made it look more human here is the adding of his natural eyelashes and just how emotional or soft his eyes look here. Like, I actually got a little uncomfortable looking at it because, like, this entire time, right, his eyes have looked very, like, intense when putting on the mask, but this is the first time that intensity kind of vanishes. And I think it's to show maybe his slight fear in this moment. Like, he's still fighting. He's still gonna fight. But I think he is a little afraid. And this fight is also where the turmoil of Ichigo becoming more hollow and Yukiura becoming more human begin to sort of show themselves. So Yukiura says, stand your guard, pay attention. And of course, Ichigo nearly does not follow this, and he gets struck. And he's like, yeah, your head would have been rolling right next to me if you didn't do that. And Ichigo just looks very scared during this interaction when Yukiura is like throwing his spear at him and such. Even like when he's about to throw another one at him, right? And there's when the mask is broken, Ichigo looks kind of like terrified, right? So now he's just expressing pure fear. But then he goes right back to being determined to win when he replenishes his mask. And then following into 347, or 346 and 347, this section of the fight, right? Yukiura tells him, like, fire your Getsuga. Do it. Show me so I can tell you the difference in our strength. And this panel really shocked me because it almost looked like Ichigo was having fun with the fight, but I don't think that's what that is. I think it's just how the mask makes him look, because Ichigo goes, I was going to do that anyway, and just the way his mask looks, it looks like a creepy, toothy smile, and I still love it. Like, even if he's not having fun, I just love what that could imply, right? It just really shows that, you know, he really is part hollow. Like, no matter how human he is underneath, and no matter how he's feeling underneath, that mask is making him look more and more hollow by the minute. He fires the Getsuga, and then the eyes go full yellow again, as if like he's releasing it at full power. And then Yukiura, right, after surviving the blast, he tells him, he's like, interesting, so it really is like Arcero Obscuras. And Ichigo goes, what? Don't compare it to that. And we get a close-up eye shot of just sweat beating down in the eye holes of his mask, as if he got very like unnerved or uncomfortable with him saying that, as if Ichigo does not want to be compared to a hollow. Like, he really does. That's why he says, what? Don't compare it to that. And then Yukiura breaks his mask right after, and as he's falling, he just looks, you know, defeated. And then we get a close-up shot of Yukiura and Ichigo's face right before he kicks him into the tower. And Ichigo looks mortified. He looks terrified. I mean, that was the whole point of this fight anyway. Yukiura was really trying to tell him, like, I'm gonna make you feel despair. Like, I'm gonna show you the difference in power here, whether you like it or not. And then after Ichigo's speech of, like, I'm doing this because I have to win, Yukiura's like, fine, then I will show you what true despair looks like. And this is when he releases Segunda Etapa. And despite this, Ichigo still gets up. But something interesting happens. After he gets up, and Ichigo, you know, gets thrown around, when he puts on the mask again, his eyes don't really change. And in fact, these thick black lines around the outlines of his eyes show up. And I think this is starting to kind of reveal that Ichigo might be getting more scared of his hollow side. I think that comparison earlier might have really gotten to him. I think it's a mixture of that, however, and him just getting weaker because he's getting beaten around so much. So I think it's a mixture of his fear and his weakened state from getting thrown around. Anyways, this mask easily breaks, and soon after, Ichigo dies. Until one of the most fan-favorite forms, I'll call it Full Hollow form. Some people like to call it Vasto Lord, but I'm going to just call it Full Hollow. In chapter 350, 353, this form finally comes out. And something I noticed with the eyes here is that they're completely black. There's nothing. It's completely dull in there. It's like nothing, there's no light there, right? And throughout this fight, right, that's how he looks for the most part. It's just completely dull black hollow eyes. This fight is, I'm going to cover it very quick because there's not really much to note other than, again, the dull hollow look in his eyes. But I do want to mention this one shot of when, like, full hollow Ichigo, you know, crushes the spear. I forgot the name, I'm sorry. We get that nice close-up shot of, like, the smoke coming off of his face. And the narrow, this is the first and only time his eyes really light up. And it really reminds me of that moment of when White, when he was taking control of Ichigo during the Vizard training, and he was choking Hiyori with that, like, smile and whatnot and the narrowed look. This reminds me of exactly that, and I think that's what it's supposed to show, is that this is White. I mean, we already knew that, but I really like, it feels like a good, nice callback to kind of show, like, despite the context of the scene, you know, despite of how, like, serious this is, that instinctive happy hollow side is still kind of peering through, and you can even see how scared Yukiura looks, because he's like, I'm facing a monster. And then soon after, the mask gets broken off thanks to Yukiura's assistance. He breaks the horn before he can fire a arrow at Uryu, and Ichigo has this whole moment of, I don't want to win like this, and that fight finally ends after the unfortunate death of Yukiura. And we don't see the mask for like a little bit because it covers the Kurokuro town for a while, but we finally get back to Ichigo in chapters 378 to 379, and this is when we finally see the mask show up, and this is when he's against Yami, and something interesting happens, right? Something very interesting happens. Rukia notices the look on Ichigo's face before he puts the mask on. She's like, what happened up there? That doesn't look like the look of a winner. Because his eyes look very sad here. They look very somber, like something's up. And then when Ichigo runs off without, you know, trying to answer any questions, I mean, she didn't really ask anything to begin with. He goes to Yami, and he's like, well, now we're away from everyone. I can smash you with, or I can crush you with power. In this manga shot, remember that duality I mentioned earlier? This is where I think it's starting to become heavily into play. Because in this close-up shot, that left side that we normally see white, the eye is full yellow, and the side that I considered Ichigo's side is fully human. And while it's got that light brown hue of instinct that they usually like to portray Ichigo as throughout the manga, it also looks a little distant. And I think the storytelling that's going on here, because the mask design changed to the full holoform design as well, is that White's presence is now stronger than ever after that form, but it's also showing that Ichigo is now more distant from his inner hollow because of what just happened. So the full yellow is showing that his holification is at its peak, but it's also showing that at the same time, Ichigo is very mentally distant from this hollow side. And after striking a blow on Yami, we get this next frame of Ichigo holding the mask on his face as if, like, you know, he's holding something heavy. And the chapter name is very interesting because it's called, I'm sorry if I butcher this, I do my best to kind of be a bit accurate with the pronunciation. It says Falta de Amorita. And in Spanish, this stands for lack of harmony or deharmonization. Something along those lines. Either way, it's lack of harmony. And Ichigo, right, we get this close-up shot in the next panel of this very upset look on Ichigo's face, and only the eye color turned yellow, but the whites of his eyes are not black anymore. But he looks very upset, very strained beneath the mask in his eyes. And you remember how earlier against Ordoni, he took off that mask with confidence. This time he chucks it off like it's garbage, like it's worthless, or if it's something he's ashamed of again. And I just love that showing so much, it's such a vast difference. Before he took it off like, like it was powerful. But this time he's taking it off like it's worthless. Just the way he chucks it behind him like it's garbage. It's a really good form of storytelling. And after this, he can't even put it on. Like, he tries to put it on, but Yami's just like, "Ha, you can't put it on this time, buddy." But yeah, so now we're back to this very shameful feeling of putting on the mask, but it's not really shame here, it's fear. He's scared of his hollow side now, and we're beginning to see that through this lack of harmony within Ichigo. And after this, he begins to make his way to Kurakura Town, so we don't get to see him for a little bit until he shows up in chapter 388 with the mask. He shows up before this, but this is the next appearance. In 388, he finally confronts Aizen face to face, and Aizen's like, "Show me, the lack of your hubris or whatnot." And when Ichigo puts it on, we see that distant look again of the eyes only going yellow, but the whites of his eyes staying white, and it really does create this distant, like, non-connected appearance of him and his hollow side. It's beginning to slowly taper off. And we get another look of it when he fires a Getsuga at Aizen, and that he gets that very surprised look. He just looks very human now. Like, yeah, he's wearing a mask, but that's all it is at this point. It's just a mask. It's nothing more than that. It's just a mask on Ichigo's face. And it even easily comes off when Aizen goes up to him and he goes, "I can almost reach your heart." And then, they tell Ichigo, "Back up, little bro, we got this." They don't got this. Entire Gotai 13 almost gets, like, wiped out here. So after Yami does, like, like a suicide bombing on Aizen, or attempts to, Ichigo shows up to fight him again in 395 to 397 when he jumps down and his eyes are full yellow again. And I think that's to kind of just show, like, again, the progression of his holification, because now they're both yellow. Before, we only saw one full yellow at maximum with this new mask pattern, but now we're seeing them both full yellow. And when he comes down and strike Aizen, and he misses, Ichigo, with a more kind of like calmer expression, he's like, "I'm not through yet." This is the manga panel that actually inspired me to make this video as well. He then fires another Getsuga at Aizen, and he manages to land it this time. But when Ichigo is told by Aizen that you really met up to the expectations as I envisioned, the mask begins to crack. And his eye begins to look more, obviously he's going to look more surprised, but the mask begins to crack. And then it completely dissolves when Aizen tells him that, one of the biggest reveal in the series, that all of your battles took place in the palm of my hand. And that is the last part we see of Ichigo's hollow mask, but we do learn later it's because he is in fact scared of his hollow side. But again, just the phases and emotions that he has when wearing the mask that you can just really see in the eyes is beautiful. From getting anger in the mask, to confidence in the mask, to then shame, to resolution, and more like acceptance of the mask toward the end of the the Grimjaw fight. And then that struggle then returning back with Yukiura after being compared to a hollow, and he gets that more human, fearful look. And then after the full hollow takes form, he then begins to feel distant and afraid of his inner hollow. I just think it is one of the best ways to kind of show a character's inner turmoil, because I'm sure a lot of you may know, a lot of Ichigo's storytelling is mental. It's not focused, it's not like blatant, it's a lot of foreshadowing and subtle clues. A lot of his storytelling is subtle, and it's a lot more focused on the mental state, and that's also what I very much appreciate about Bleach. And another reason I kind of wanted to mention the duality part of everything was because Kubo made an art, I forgot which year, but it was like a year or so ago, a year or two ago, of adult Ichigo, and it shows that same duality, and guess whose side is on the left? His hollow side. The eye is black, and the right side is more human, but he's smiling like white. And I think that just confirms the duality point even more on his face and in his eyes. And I think that's just one of the most beautiful things ever. Like, again, I love this arc not just for the cool factor, but just for the development of Ichigo and just what it tells you about him as a character as he puts on this mask. I love it so much. And this is like part of what made me really fall in love with the series and what made me such a nerd about it. I could probably easily tell you the entire story from start to finish in like 3 hours if I really wanted to. That's how much I really delved into this. But that is my way of interpreting and my way of saying that Kubo's greatest strength and eyes really helped him tell this story arc of Ichigo. And with that, that is the end of really this video. This is my first video and first time doing something like this, so any feedback on how I could do better or any ideas of what you want me to cover would be very much appreciated. I'm going to try to do more gameplay stuff as well, however. I'll try to do these videos like every now and then. I don't know how frequent I'll do these yet. This video took me a little bit just because I needed to figure out how to get all this done, but I would love to do more. And I already have another video. It's not going to be about Bleach, but I already have it in mind. And all I'm going to say is that video is going to have a slight chance of maybe or maybe not disturbing the peace a little bit. But until next time, I'll see you then.